So I'm here with Bill Connor at the South Carolina Tea Party Convention, and it seems like, wow, there's a lot of people here, 650 people here at the convention, and you know, a lot of them, I've been hearing a lot of things, concerns about where we're going as a country as far as like the fiscal responsibility. You know, we're over $17 trillion in debt. You know, our borders are still not secure. That's been an issue.
Sure.
Just came out of a conference, Common Core, packed house,
yep.
Probably around 200 people. And, you know, there's a lot of issues that we're facing in the country right now. And I know we both heard of a father of Navy SEAL, part of the SEAL Team 6. Mm-hmm. Son died over there. A lot of unanswered questions. And I know there's a lot of issues that you're running for, but,
sure.
You know, tell us a little bit about what are some of the important issues that you were
Sure.
that made you want to jump into the race.
Well, first thing is just being here is being with family for me. And I say that because, you know, my background, again, having never been active as far as being an active Republican, always being a conservative. But I'm one of that group that I came back from Afghanistan summer 2008, and it was a time frame of the TARP bailouts, so I got a chance to see Republicans undermining all conservative values. Got a chance to see Barack Obama take it further with the so-called stimulus package. So that got me all into everything. I obviously ran for lieutenant governor before, but I spoke at the first Tea Party in the history of the state, February 27, 2009, and people now have seen all the video of that. I think I was the second speaker, and not a whole lot can say that. There's a lot of folks now that are part of the Tea Party movement. I was truly there, not a Johnny-come-lately, but there, introduced Jim DeMint on April 15. So it's one of the reasons why I'm here, and I'm really running from the Tea Party values, which is the Constitution. And to me, that's it. It's a document I swore to support and defend over 23 years ago. I've done it on the battlefield. I've seen people die for it. I believe in it. And before, I saw the enemy as being overseas. Now I see that to truly defend it, it's got to be defended back here. And so there's a combination of things that go with undermining who we are with the Constitution. $17 trillion is one aspect of that, but a national security asset. You know, it's one that, quite frankly, can destroy us. In fact, Admiral Dempsey, you know, one time was asked about this, and Admiral Mullen was asked about the greatest threat, and he said the debt. And there's a lot of truth to that. But along with that, though, quite frankly, is people that understand what's really going on within America, but also overseas. And this whole issue of radical Islam was talked about, but a lot of people don't get it. Lindsey doesn't get it. The fact that he went to Egypt and supported the Muslim Brotherhood over the Egyptian military. And I've served in Egypt. I know the dynamics. My uncle-in-law is a Christian Egyptian. He did the absolute worst thing he could have done, and now we've lost Egypt as an ally. He doesn't get it. He was going to back al-Qaeda-based rebels. So
in Syria?
In Syria, yeah. I mean, it'd be one thing if we had some kind of benign rebellion, but as I talked about with you going back a long time ago, and I wrote about this, by the way, back in 2011, we should have never supported the overthrow of Mubarak. It helped drive some things that really did not need to take place. Within Syria, we allowed, again, an al-Qaeda-based rebellion to go in, and Christians there are screaming out for our help. And Assad is not a Boy Scout. He's a bad guy tied to Israel, but, or correction, tied to Iran, excuse me. But we should have never decided to go ahead and back al-Qaeda-based rebels going in against Assad. So all these issues together are things that came to me as to why I'm running. It's hard to put a finger on any specific certain one of them because they're all.
I mean, I'd heard a lot of criticism. It just seems like there's a lack of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And Lindsey Graham, who prides himself as being a you know, someone that's served in the military, but it just seems like there's a lot of lack of judgment as far as wanting to so quickly bomb Syria and back al-Qaeda, the same al-Qaeda that we're fighting in Iraq. Right. Which actually, I mean, look at the Fallujah situation. We have al-Qaeda that basically is taken over back Fallujah. I had friends who fought in Fallujah in Marine Corps, and now it's overtaken. I mean, what's the solution to that? And can you speak about some of the poor judgment calls that him and Senator McCain has really exhibited?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, Egypt is a big one, but not even just Egypt, even Syria. Again, was a spot where they weren't paying attention to who we were looking to support. Even before this last round of almost attacks that came in, you already had John McCain and Lindsey Graham screaming and yelling about supporting the rebels. Well, these rebels, as we soon found out, were not the kind of rebels that we should have been supporting. Libya, yes, Gaddafi wasn't a Boy Scout, but Gaddafi, because he was scared, had given up his chemical weapons program, done a number of things, and we wasted a lot of money there and flew air support for what became basically Al-Qaeda-backed groups to come in, and we've got problems in Libya right now. For me, foreign policy, as our founders showed us, should be based on one thing: national interest. It doesn't mean we can't send troops to fight overseas. For example, we did send troops to fight Barbary pirates within 10 years of signing the Constitution. Those were by the founders that signed it. So the founders didn't intend us never to have to fight overseas, but it's got to be American interest. And spreading democracy is ideology. It's not necessarily in our interest that we had the Hezbollah take over in Lebanon, or Hamas take over in Gaza, or the Muslim Brotherhood take over. These are things against our interest. So we'll support things that are our interest, but that's one of the big problems. Now we look at, from weakness we've shown, stupidity we've shown, that in Iraq, both Ramadi and Fallujah, in Al-Anbar province, and Anbar province is next to Syria. And by the way, the group there initially called themselves the Islamic Government of Iraq. Now it's called the Islamic Government of Iraq and Levant, because they see a transnational caliphate already linking up with the rebels in Syria, along with the Sunni rebels in Al-Anbar, and forget the countries that are there. This is an issue. This is a major issue, and Graham has shown he doesn't get it. Now, one of the things, too, I'd say is that all this undermining of the military that we're seeing already, the undermining the warrior ethos, bringing radical social experimentation, everything else, our enemies are seeing this, and they're not stupid. And we have done a lot of work over the last 10 years. I mean, as bad as it was having to go in other countries, we showed we could face them on the ground, and we had people willing to do that. Right now, as we're pushing out the warrior generals, guys like General Mattis, as we're bringing in, again, this radical ideology in the military, we are looking weak. And that perception of weakness, just like in economics, the perceptions drive the train in a lot of things. Within the military, a lot of it's perception. And we're perceived right now across the world to be weak. And
there's thousands of Christians in the Middle East being slaughtered.
Oh, exactly.
They're being crucified. They're being,
yes.
Terrible different reports coming out, even in Syria, where
Yes.
Al-Qaeda has come in and, you got the Al-Nusra Front
Yep.
just slaughtering Christians that have been in Syria for generations,
Yes.
all the way dating back to the Bible.
Yep.
There's no leader that's speaking about this
Right.
from the president or from any real leaders in the Senate.
Right.
The only leader that I've really heard was the British. Some of the leaders there have called out or asked the UN to look into this.
Right.
What kind of leader are you going to be when it comes to that?
Oh, I got a personal tie to it. I mean, again, my uncle-in-law is a Christian Egyptian. His family now, they live in Arizona. I mean, things got too bad, quite frankly. I've been watching this for many years. I've written about it. If you go to BillConnorOnline.com, for 10 years I've written about radical Islam and the plight of Christians in these countries, and it's pitiful. If you look at Bethlehem, for example, when you go back to the 1940s, it was almost exclusively Christian. It is almost Christian-free now because of what's occurred, and nobody talks about it. Iraq is at less than half the pre-war Christian population, and we're talking a substantial number. When you talk about Egypt, for example, you're talking about over 9 million people. 9 million. I mean, twice the size of South Carolina. Those are Christians that live in Egypt, and no one seems to care a thing about it. Now, I will say Rand Paul has spoken about the Christian issue, so I'll give him that. But guys like Graham, and the Christian community in Egypt was crying out, please support the military. And Graham flies in and goes against their interests to read the Military the Right Act and tell them to bring the Muslim Brotherhood back in. I mean, this is almost like if the German generals in World War II had done what they should have done, which is remove Hitler, and us going saying, no, put Hitler back in the process. I mean, just that kind of stupidity and not speaking out. And I can take Graham on because I've been overseas, deployed 4 times. I've got ties to the Middle East. I've lived in Europe. I want to take him on national defense and foreign policy, in addition to all the domestic stuff, which I think most of us agree with. He's wrong on.
Now, Thursday night, I was at Pickens County Republican Party,
Yeah.
and they actually became the 7th GOP
Sure.
group in the state of South Carolina to censure Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
30 points of his voting record and different actions that they totally oppose that go against the Republican platform. This was actually in his own home county.
Yes.
He's
Right.
from Central. This was Pickens County.
Yep.
It looks like he's losing a lot of support. But you mentioned, you mentioned Rand Paul.
Yes.
and I know that Ted Cruz has been mentioned here. It seems like the Tea Party definitely looks at those guys, Mike Lee, as leaders. Now, of course, Lindsey Graham and John McCain's on the other side of the spectrum.
Sure.
You know, what kind of senator are you going to be? You know, are you going to work with these guys if elected? Will
Sure.
you work with Ted Cruz? Do you feel like you're a Ted Cruz Republican?
Yeah, I do. And if you look at my video, that's when I first announced I would stand with the Rand Pauls, the Mike Lees, the Ted Cruzes. I'm with them. I mean, imagine if we had 35 Ted Cruzes. I don't care if we have a majority of that. The kind of backbone that would show, the kind of passion that would bring the American people, the way they could influence all of America. Because what we got is we got wishy-washy folks that are like Graham, who are basically Democrats in ideology, and they're doing nothing for us in the cause. And this argument that, well, Graham's electable, so let's go for Graham. Well, you know, we're electable. I'm electable. And I can match Graham. I'm military background easily. I've done, quite frankly, when it comes to actual sort of, you know, active service and all that, I've got more than he does, and that's just a fact. And I've done it within the infantry, which is a little different than the JAG Corps. I say that stuff because it is important that, you know, when I debate him, I will make sure that people see, you know that they've got someone who cares about veterans, cares about national defense, cares about these sorts of things, but is also going to stand with the Ted Cruzes, with the Rand Pauls, and stick up for our values. It comes down to the Constitution. I believe Lindsey Graham has, maybe it was through neglect, but he has basically undermined his oath to support and defend the Constitution, and therefore he needs to be given the pink slip and go home.
Now, NSA, wow, that thing's really blown up. Of course, Lindsey Graham was famous saying that he doesn't mind the NSA or the federal government to snoop through his Verizon bill and see, you know, personal text messages. Now, there first came out with General Clapper, who said that the American or the NSA wasn't spying. We found out through leaked documents that they are. Not only that, but detailed text messages, millions of Americans text messages a day. So, you know, and this is all without probable cause.
Exactly.
You know, this is not like targeting terrorists, known terrorists. This is, you know, bulk type of, you know, mass collection of data on innocent Americans. What's your position on that?
Oh, I'm completely against it. And one thing you'll see in my initial announcement video is I had that direct quote from him stand there when he said, "I don't care one bit if the NSA has my phone records." Well, you know, first of all, you knew about it. And there's a big difference. For example, when I was over in Afghanistan, I knew my communications would be censored. When people went to fight in World War II, they knew that someone was going through the records. But to not know about it, you know, makes it completely different. Because we had no say-so in it. So for him to sit there patronizingly, acting like a tough guy, that I don't care if they have, well, again, you knew what was there. You know, this goes against, Benjamin Franklin put it best. In this, if you're willing to trade your liberty for security, you deserve neither. And he's right. You know, in this case, we are going to take some risk. I got that. Like, for example, you know, TSA, we should privatize the security. And here's the thing, is the private marketplace will help force the issue. You get, you know, one terrorist act, believe me, that airline's going under. There are a lot of ways to sort of force that. But the TSA has proven itself to be overly intrusive. They don't do any profiling, which, frankly, profiling is a normal police method of looking for those. It's not going to be the Scandinavian grandmother coming through, but we play this stupid game of going through and probing her just so we don't make people feel bad. Well, you know, we're here trying to protect ourselves, and, you know, again, it's a perfectly good method, and it comes down to an issue of political correctness and not caring about America first, caring about ideology first, worrying about what other people are going to think of us, and that just needs to stop. And so I'm really just fed up with the NSA and what they've done to our privacy, and I will fight it tooth and nail.
What's your thoughts on war and nation building? Because there's a big concern that we're getting involved way too much. You know, it seems like we're you know, our founding fathers warned us of not being entangled in foreign affairs. What's your position on that?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I want to say is that those who have been to war and seen the things I've seen as an infantry officer downrange are the last people that ever want to go to war. Because they've seen it. They've seen what it causes. They've seen that there's just not only destruction of the battlefield, what it means for people coming back home. And I want to do everything I can to prevent war as much as I possibly can. Now, part of that is being strong. George Washington put it best, if you want peace, prepare for war. What he meant was, if you look like you can fight, just like kind of like the boys in the schoolyard. If you look like you can fight, you're confident, you're not going to fight because no one's going to pick on you. And that's one thing with our nation is we are starting to show such weakness. We're going to drive ourselves into war. So I want to make that part kind of clear. The other thing is there's no constitutional mandate to use ideology at the point of a sword. So again, our founders sent Marines to fight Barbary pirates in North Africa. So clearly you can send forces overseas for our national interests. The reason why, though, was that radical Islamists, the Barbary pirates, were taking Christians captives and slaves, and we put a stop to it overseas, but it was American interest first. It was protect American lives. That's what we should use it for. So, for example, if it comes into this whole idea of let's send troops to help bring democracy as just an idea when it really has nothing to do with American interest, that's wrong. And what it does is it makes us look weak, because if you go to war, you better be willing to go all the way. My dad used to say, if you're going to pull out a gun, you better be ready to pull the trigger. This whole thing, we're going to send cruise missiles, airstrikes, but no boots on the ground. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're willing to pull that trigger, if you're willing to pull the gun out, then don't think it's just going to be airstrikes and missiles, because what happens is someone gets shot down, and they get shot down by Russian anti-aircraft gunners. Special operations, as they go in there and pick a person out, they start getting killed. It drags us in. So before we go to war, all those thoughts had to go through. And I want to make sure that Congress declares war, we've thought about it, and it's not about nation building. The government's job is the sword. Charity is the job of the church and individuals. We want to help people out. We give money. We do charitable work. We do things of that nature. That's not the job of the government.
So what's your position on foreign aid, especially those countries that hate America? What's your and of course we stopped the foreign aid in Egypt because of basically it was a coup. Yeah. And what's your thoughts on that?
Sure. Foreign aid should be extremely limited. I do believe it's constitutional in the sense that one of the enumerated powers, the enumerated power of Congress, is provide for the common defense. When I fought the Taliban, the Afghans next to me were shooting bullets that we paid for, and they were funded to help fight, so they were helping me. That's foreign aid. There are times where foreign aid, like for example, Israel. I believe that Israel stands as a beacon for us. They stood for us throughout the Cold War. What they do in the foreign aid we spend there is money that goes in to help protect us against radical Islam, where we stand, so on and so forth. But these nations hate us. Cut it off. There's nothing whatsoever saying, like for example, one thing I disagreed with was we should have cut off the foreign aid to the Muslim Brotherhood. The problem was we didn't do it for them, and then we cut it off for the military. So the message we sent was, we're for the Muslim Brotherhood, we don't want the military. That was a problem. And that's the only reason why in that case I would have done it for the Muslim Brotherhood, but I would not have done it right when the military, I would have cheered them on saying, you just saved the Constitution. That's not the time to be cutting foreign aid at that time for that reason. But I will say foreign aid is one where, because you can provide for the national defense, there are limited circumstances, again, where if someone's fighting the same enemy you are, like during World War II, we had allies killing the Germans, support them for that specific reason like we did. That's foreign aid, but only because it's in our national interest.
Do you think $50 billion of foreign aid is too much?
That's a lot. It depends on, obviously where it's going, so on and so forth and all that. I mean, during World War II, in this case, of course, those were Russians, but, the Russians were fighting the Germans. We sent a lot of money, resources, because we wanted to keep the Germans fighting the Russians at that time. So the main thing is the principal issue. And all this thing of sending foreign aid to go help some no-name country with fighting some kind of disease that, should be a charitable type thing is absolutely beyond the pale of what the Constitution allows. It allows for common defense, so it should be a military defense.
What do you think about drones, just going in, striking, especially Americans without due process?
Oh, yeah. It sickened me when, Rand Paul was making the legitimate discussions about the use of it on American soil, because I'm an infantry officer, which means I've always been on the ground calling in airstrikes if we need them. Unless you're on the ground, you really don't know what's going on. And concern is that when you have pilotless drones being flown by some guy sipping coffee in Washington, D.C., thousands of miles away with a joystick, he doesn't know all the things that are really there. We used it in Afghanistan. We were on the ground, we were in danger, we were looking at the things we were shooting at. We could tell they weren't civilians. I'm very concerned with this whole thing. And of course, then Obama wants to give them a medal, almost a heroism medal for, again, drinking the coffee back in some, air-conditioned building in D.C. for flying a joystick weapon. That's wrong. And there could be, obviously drones can be of service. There are times in warfare where you're using them for a reason, but on American citizens and to fly around and be something that was never intended is something I was completely for Rand Paul speaking out about that.
And let's talk about Obamacare. It is a complete debacle.
Oh, yeah.
I interviewed some Democrats. They didn't even like it.
Right.
Of course, they want single payer
Yes.
universal health care.
Right.
A complete government control. But the problem is you got some Republicans that actually are talking about fixing Obamacare instead of like repealing it altogether, getting rid of it. There's a nullification movement. People like to say that word here.
Yeah.
As far as in South Carolina, trying to eliminate Obamacare in South Carolina. What is, if elected, what will you do about this huge situation as far as Obamacare? Are you for fixing it, or you feel eliminating it altogether?
This goes back to my constitutionalist campaign. I mean, I'm all about the Constitution. Nowhere in there does allow for health care. And in fact, actually, when it came to the individual mandate, even this liberal Supreme Court said that under the Commerce Clause, what they're trying to use, this could not be used for the Commerce Clause. And that's, of course, what they argued to bring this health care underneath the federal government. Completely unconstitutional. It's something we should do away with. I stood there in the cold rain on that day and, was at the nullification rally. I've listened to people say we shouldn't use the term nullification because it might imply we're nullifying it across all the states and the federal government. We're in South Carolina. We can't do that. All we can say is we have a copy of the Constitution, and we can read it, and laws must be in pursuance of the Constitution. This law is not in pursuance, and therefore we're nullifying it in South Carolina. That's it. Again, all the states, I hope they nullify it, but I can't make the choice for them. They got to look at the Constitution. It's a contract not just for lawyers. It's a contract between states, between the branches, for the people. And I'm glad to stand with South Carolina that way. But if I'm up there, I will try to push legislation as best I can to end Obamacare. I don't want to fix it. I want to end it. I want to bring free market solutions. And in fact, if you look at the roots of this healthcare debacle, it was government involvement. We need to keep our promises to Medicare, but if we go back to the 1960s and not have done Medicare, Medicaid, the so-called Great Society programs, we wouldn't be in this mess because government got involved, and with Medicare and Medicaid only reimbursed at a 20% or so rate, which drove all the costs up because everyone needed to get the money for the services. So suddenly, instead of having country doctors that can go in and take care of you, you had things now where you go to an emergency room and you're spending $12,000 for a hangnail.
Another huge issue is you have the Federal Reserve constantly printing money. You got QE 1, 2, 3, out of control spending in Congress. They just passed a $1.1 trillion spending bill.
Yeah.
Part of that is to gut or reduce the pensions for veterans. We're talking disabled veterans as well.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that? As far as the Fed, and also about the $1.1 trillion spending bill.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's call the Fed what it is. A central bank, as some of our founders all talked about. The idea for the Fed was put together in private. Same time we instituted the IRS, same time we instituted senators being directly elected. A lot of changes, progressive changes, if you will, at that time. And we've seen the effects of it. This fractional reserve system where the money goes out. And I can go through all the discussion now. The point is that it creates inflation. Now, a lot of the stuff we haven't seen yet. It's going to take a little bit of time to get out, but we're going to see hyperinflation here very soon, unfortunately. And it's a tax on us. Whenever you get inflation, you get a tax in the way the Fed is doing things. So I'd like to see the Fed audited, quite frankly. I'd like to see someone up there that can go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we get control of that. But on this one, again, the debt is our number one problem. $17 trillion, it's going higher, and it does matter. This whole Keynesian ideology, which, by the way, Keynesianism was something the Democrats all pushed until you had guys like Cheney saying deficits don't matter. Republicans bought into it too. Lindsey Graham bought into it. Things like the TARP bailout. I want to fight that stuff. I want to fight this whole spending out of control government and put it underneath where it should be. It was constitutional limitation. And did I hit any of the questions that you had?
Well, I want to tell what's your thoughts on them passing a bill that cuts.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That cuts the pensions of veterans.
Yeah, and that's one. I started out. This is very personal to me. My father, grandfather, great grandfather were career military officers. That pension is something we swore to them before they went off to war, before they risked their lives, and we keep our word. In this case, we're not keeping our word. For myself, I've got 23 years of service. I will be up for a pension whenever I retire. It's not about me, though. It really is about what we've done with our veterans. We promised them something. And now, the bad thing is, I think for most veterans, they'd be willing to take the cuts if we first cut all these other give-me's, these entitlements, which no one has earned. So until you start cutting the welfare, the Medicaid, food stamp, all the things that are not earned, you don't go after what was earned. And it was earned when people gave their blood and heart and treasure on the battlefield. And people understand what military retirement is. You really can, because of the way the government works, you can't pay someone enough to move every couple of years, to go overseas and fight, all the family issues, everything. And plus, the 20 years someone's in the service, they're generally not working on a civilian skill, so they got to start all the way over from scratch in their 40s. So we give them a good pension. It is a decent pension, but it makes up for all the other years. That's why you don't touch that pension. They've earned it, and you need to be cutting everything else first.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
How hard will you fight for the Second Amendment?
Oh, I would fight with literally my life. I mean, I've had to use a weapon in combat. Once you've gone through that, and by the way, I had to use my 9mm in combat, so in addition to my M4. I say that because you may never have to use it, but I'll tell you what, when it's life and death and people are actually shooting at you, you've got to have a way to defend yourself. And it's a clear constitutional right. I mean, the right shall not be infringed is exactly what it says, and I will do everything to protect that right. I mean, my son and I are hunters. My family is all pro-gun. I can't tell you how many guns we got. I'm a member of the NRA. I've got a CWP. I carry a concealed weapon. It's a right. It's who we are. So I'd fight it with everything I am.
Well, Bill Connor, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.